Deep within each of us, there is a yearning to awaken our inner mystic. In this podcast, we explore topics related to metaphysics, including the law of attraction, spiritual awakening, consciousness, and ascension. We invite you to join us on a journey of awakening the inner mystic in order to unleash magic and miracles in your life. Hello. Today, we are going to have a discussion about a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, which is magic. So we're not talking about the kind of magic that involves sleight of hand, anything like that, magic shows. We're talking about the magic that shows up in our lives as signs, symbols, and synchronicities, which elicits a sense of awe and wonder. We really wanted to delve deep into this topic and try to make sense of what's behind magic and start a discussion about how to identify it in your life.
Our intention for this podcast is to demystify magic. And what people do is they call magic or anything out of the ordinary woo-woo. The connotation of the word woo-woo is like it's weird stuff. It's out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe in the woo-woo stuff, you're weird. But I want to flip this on its head. I think the opposite is true. If you deny your body and your spirit your whole life, that's weird.
Definitely.
That's weird. But if you start following your bliss and following your joy and following your spirit and what your body wants to do, then you're on track. The opposite way is weird. We have been living in bizarro world,
right,
where we follow the mind and deny the spirit. And it's led us into places that are pretty bleak and defeating to the spirit.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think that, again, getting into that left hemisphere for eons upon eons has led us to that place of where we've missed that magic and wonder in our lives. And so today we really want to bring that back for you all. And by demystifying, we're really going to get into some discussions about how there's a lot of research nowadays that's actually marrying science and spirituality piece and this magic piece. So we're going to get into that today, among other things. So Heather, why don't we start off with kind of a discussion about the idea of following your North Star? Because I think that's kind of when we start to see magic unfold in our lives.
We've talked about before in this podcast about following your North Star, and your North Star is that fixed point in your body, and your soul knows your path. And if you get off your path, it will continually cause you to get back on track over and over again. No matter how many times you get off track, your soul will always do things and orchestrate circumstances and people in your life and books and music or whatever it is to get you back on track. Martha Beck tells a really funny story. I think it's in Steering by Starlight, where she talks about the soul. And she talked about this man who he was in a car accident and they had to repair his nose. And what they did was they took a piece of his ear and put it on his nose to repair the skin on his nose. And what kept on happening is his nose would start taking on the quality of an ear.
I remember that.
Do you remember that?
That was one of the, that part really stood out to me because I was like, how crazy is that? It's like that tissue just wanted to be an ear.
Yes, that tissue just wanted to be an ear, and it would not be deterred. No matter how many times the doctors tried to fix it and make it back into a nose, it would become an ear again. And so that's the way our soul works. Whenever we get off track, our soul continually tries to turn back into an ear when you're trying to be a nose.
Right.
I mean, it's just always, you can always count on that to be constant. What you'll notice, though, is when you start following your North Star, magic shows up in your life. When I think of following your North Star, I think of being on a dark path in the woods and that it's just so pitch black. I see myself on one lit up portion of the path, just one lit up portion. And then you get another sign and symbol. And then the next part of the path lights up. And that's the way the universe works. It just lights up one little piece at a time. And I've always wished that my guides would come down like, oh,
Suddenly appearing before you.
Suddenly appearing and deliver a message to me that I could follow, but that's not the way it works. The divine does not send you a text message like, this is what you should do today. You have to figure it out. It's like a puzzle that you have to figure out, but that's what we came here for. We came here for the mystery and the magic of it all. And that's
what makes it exciting, right? It's kind of like like one of those, what do they call it? Those escape rooms where it's like, you got to, the whole, it wouldn't be fun if you already knew what the ending was going to be and you found the treasure or the prize or whatever, or you solved the murder. I mean, the whole fun of it is actually being the detective and trying to put all the pieces together and figuring it out. That's the whole fun of it. And I think sometimes that's what life is about.
Yeah, exactly. And who would pay for that and escape the room where they say, well, this is how you get out?
Right.
They wouldn't have a business.
No.
That's what we came here for, to figure out the mystery.
I love that.
Sometimes the trail gets cold. You're like, I'm here alone in the dark. I'm sitting here on this portion of the path that's lit up, and I don't know what comes next. And what Martha says to do is she says, and this is Finding Your Way in a Wild New World, which is an amazing book where she gets very magical and mystical. And you'll notice her trajectory throughout her books. The more recent books are more mystical than her first. She uses the metaphor of tracking an animal. Sometimes the trail goes cold. And when the trail goes cold, you just have to go back to the last hot track. If you're tracking a rhinoceros, like you just go back to the track that was clear and that you knew where that rhinoceros was headed. And then you go from there and you use your senses. You have to be totally present and fine tune into that present moment to move forward. And that's how it works. And whenever you do that, you will get right back on track. And she says to find the last hot track, this is key. Think about the last time your body, mind, and spirit were totally lit up and you were in that flow state. And it seemed like 20 minutes, but it was really 5 hours. So if you're in a flow state like that, that's your cue for your North Star, because that means you're in the present moment and time no longer exists. So look towards that because that's your bliss right there. The universe will send you signs along the way. And if you don't get it the first time, the universe will practically knock itself out to get your attention. Like synchronicity after synchronicity. It's pretty incredible.
It's almost like playing a game of hot and cold, right?
Yeah.
For me, I notice those synchronicities showing up when I am on the right track. Well, not always, but like most of the time. We'll get into the symbolism later. But like for me, I get like repeated number patterns, or I will get like something that I've talked about, and that same concept will show up like multiple times in my life. And I know that, okay, this is where we want you to head. You're getting hotter over here if you follow this particular symbol. I love that because it's like the way that the universe talks to us.
Yeah, you follow the symbols and signs, and this is how you know that it resonates with you. You pay attention to your body and how it reacts to those synchronicities and symbols. I mean, your body, you'll feel it in your heart, like an opening in your heart, or you'll feel that aha moment that we described in one of our last podcasts.
Oh, the epiphany. Yes.
Epiphany.
And then your hairs start to stand on end and you know that you've touched truth.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And the thing about it is your mind, we've been conditioned to poo-poo that stuff.
Right.
Your logical mind will say, that doesn't make sense. You're nuts. What are you thinking? And so this is what Joseph Campbell says about that. He says, the brain is a secondary organ to the body. It must submit and serve the humanity of the body. And I absolutely love that because in this culture, we've got it backwards. The mind is leading the body, and it should be the opposite. He says that in the movie, The Power of Myth, which is a must-see. So I want to tell you all a story about how I started following my North Star and what it led me to. And in fact, if I hadn't followed the synchronicities and I had just dismissed it, I would not be here right now talking to Irene.
Me too. I wouldn't have even met Heather. Literally, the book, The North Star, led me to Heather because she was a Martha Beck life coach. So
that's right. We both started following our North Stars.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is those choices, they build upon each other to lead you to the moment where you are right now.
Right. And it doesn't mean it's the end point, right? Because we think that, oh, well, this is going to lead me to my career, but maybe your career is just another stepping stone to something else. And if you put these stepping stones together, it's like the process of your evolution where we are always evolving and we're never stagnant. But I do want you to share that story because I love this. I love listening to this story.
Okay. I had been listening a lot to Abraham. I had 2 babies at home and I was...
Abraham Hicks, right?
Abraham Hicks, yes. Mr. Hicks.
Not Abraham from the Bible. No. Abraham Hicks.
Abraham Hicks. Yes. Abraham started me on this journey and I had been listening to videos. I was at home with 2 babies and I was watching my nephew. So I was a busy lady. And what I would do is during nap time, I would do the dishes and try to get caught up. But during that time, I had my laptop computer and I would watch Abraham videos because we all know that stuff can be very mind numbing. I mean, just staying at home and doing the dishes, just a repetitive type task. So that was just getting me through it. And I was led to watch this movie and the movie was called The Secret Behind the Secret. Because what happened was Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks was supposed to be on The Secret, but The Secret considered her too weird to be on The Secret. But
too woo-woo.
Too woo-woo, right? Even though she was the one that inspired.
Oh, she was the one that pretty much created the law of attraction. I mean, I don't know if she created it, but she really brought that idea into the world.
She really did and has inspired so many people. If you listen to a lot of the self-help gurus, they've all been influenced by Abraham and
absolutely.
Esther Hicks. So here's what happened. So I watched the movie The Secret Behind the Secret. And at the end, Abraham says, so if you want to start manifesting things that you have very little resistance around. And she brought up the example of like maybe an animal showing up in your life. Just sit down, hold it lightly, and just whatever comes to your mind. What came up in my mind was a blue butterfly and then a hummingbird. I did that little exercise and just held it lightly and forgot about it. So the next day I was reading Oprah magazine and every month I would read Martha Beck's article in Oprah magazine. And as a matter of fact, that's why I got that magazine. It was a good magazine, but her articles, I'm like, who is this woman? And at the end of one of her articles, she mentioned her life coach training program. And I was like, a life coach? What is that? But it sounded really interesting to me. And she had her website listed it on the article. And so I went to her website and on the website at the very top was a giant blue butterfly. And I kid you not, it was like a lightning bolt moment, like you were talking about the epiphany moment where all my hairs were standing on. And I mean, I've had 2 of those moments. And the other one was when I met my husband. But this one was like, I felt electrified and I knew. And I told my husband about it. And he was like, you should do this. There's no resistance about it. And so I signed up for the program. Little did I know that the program was perfect for me. And in fact, my intuition knew it. My logical mind didn't know, but my logical mind knew enough to just let my intuition guide it. My logical mind stepped aside enough so that I could follow this path. And then I thought, well, this blue butterfly showed up for me and it showed up for me in a big way. Where is this hummingbird that I also saw in my mind? So the next day I was supposed to go to my brother's house. I was going to have a play date there with my nephews and my boys. But at the last minute, this mom at my kids' preschool said, hey, do you want to go on a play date to the park? And I thought it was a beautiful day. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. So I changed my mind and canceled my plans and went to the park. And I was sitting on this bench and she goes, oh, there's a hummingbird right behind you. And I turned around and there it was. I mean, it was so close. And I've always thought hummingbirds were kind of like the fairies of the universe. You know, they just look like little fairies. Yeah, they're magical to me. They are.
Yeah. They don't even look like they're in their dimension for sure.
I know. And so my mom calls me later on and she goes, did you know there was a hummingbird in your brother's garage and it couldn't get out? It was just stuck in there.
So cool.
And
so basically you would have, in both choices, had you chosen to hang out with your mom, you would have been exposed to that hummingbird. So in all possibilities, you would have crossed paths with this hummingbird.
Yeah.
So it was living in both of those realities running simultaneously.
And I was meant to see it. And from then on, the universe has been sending me hummingbirds when either I'm on track or when I feel so desperately hurt that I feel like I can't pick myself up again, or things just seem really bad, a hummingbird will show up. And
it's part of your coaching logo, isn't it?
It's my coaching logo.
Yeah.
And recently we started this podcast and I'm like, okay, if I'm on track, where's my hummingbird, universe? And the next day Irene puts this watercolor hummingbird on her Instagram page, unbeknownst to me. So,
and I wasn't even looking to paint a hummingbird, but I was trying to get inspired and I just saw it and I didn't even realize it was a hummingbird. And then Sophie's like, oh, you're painting a hummingbird. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is a hummingbird. So yeah, that was totally a synchronicity.
Totally. And there it was. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that affirmation.
Right.
So.
Yep.
And so the day after the program had started, and by the way, when the program started during that first call, it felt like a sliding doors moment for me. It felt like literally that I was entering some parallel world where a whole world was opening up to me that I had no idea about.
Yeah. We've been really thinking about this, these synchronicities and symbols and everything. And one of the things that I've gotten some guidance on from my Akashic Records team is that the universe is infinitely wise and intelligent. So this one day I went into the records and I was just asking for their guidance on this whole topic. They took me up to space. So I was like in this realm and all of a sudden I see all these eyes staring at me, but it wasn't eerie. They were almost like the third eye. It was like these eyes were just really wise and intelligent. And I really got this sense that the universe is wise beyond our comprehension. Like we don't even get it. It's like hidden. We can't see it. It's behind the curtain, the veil, whatever you want to call it. And we have no idea how intelligent it is. And that it is always orchestrating the details and events in our lives. And it's altering how they will unfold. So including the paths we will cross, the people we will meet, and down to the very details of the surroundings we will encounter in every scene of our lives. So these surroundings, which we believe to be random and meaningless, are really always encoded with meaning and symbolism. We just don't realize it. We don't realize the symbolism that exists within everything that is around us. So basically, I got this sense that there is no randomness in life. The universe is always conspiring to lead us toward our North Star or your soul's purpose. What scientific proof is there to show that these synchronicities and these symbols and everything are really coming from the universe? What if this is all just coincidences showing up?
Well, right. Even Einstein understood this. This is a great quote from Einstein. Everything is determined, the beginning as well as the end, by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insect as well as for the star. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune intoned in the distance by an invisible piper.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of your Akashic Records reading exactly.
Right. Yeah. Like there's this invisible force that's kind of guiding everything. And it's like imbued in everything, seen and unseen. It's just at play in everything. With other podcasts, we've been learning about people like Tesla and Edison and all these like famous people who have brought in these inventions in the world who've really changed our world. It's these people, a lot of them have really turned mystical. Like even Newton, I found out, was actually behind the scenes. He was trying to decode the symbolism of the book of Revelations. I mean, it was like these people were more spiritual than we realize. But unfortunately, they lived in a world where that was not seen as credible in the science community, right?
So they all had to keep the down low.
Right. They had to keep their mouths shut about it. But there's always things that they point to. One of the things that I discovered is that there are mathematical and geometric principles that are governing how things expand, grow, and evolve. And this is known as the Fibonacci sequence, also known as the golden ratio. And basically what that is a mathematical principle that things expand in a certain sequence, right? It's not just like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. It's like a 1 to a 3 to a 5 to a 9 or something like that. So this principle is really imbued in all of nature in terms of how things grow and how they expand. So for example, like the shape of a snail's shell is governed by this principle, the way an artichoke appears, how trees branch out, and even the proportions of our body. Like they all have this underlying mathematical principle that mathematicians just recently, quote, rediscover just within the last century. And again, I think that our ancestors were more keen on being able to observe patterns in the universe, and they didn't have to measure it with complicated equipment. So they were almost better at it than we are. But with us, it's like, because we have to measure everything and make sense of it, we haven't been able to really understand it until more recent years.
Yeah, they did it more intuitively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had a more developed intuition.
Mm-hmm.
We watched this movie about Egypt, and we will delve into that more deeply here in a minute. But I just wanted to point out, in that movie that we watched, they talked about this temple in Egypt called the Temple of Man. And this temple was created according to sacred geometry.
Right.
And
it was that Fibonacci
sequence.
Yes.
And in the movie, they said that just walking through the temple was transformational and healing. And I thought, oh, I would love to go to that temple to walk through it. And then I had an epiphany the other day. I was like, wait a minute. The whole of nature is designed by the Fibonacci sequence.
Right.
So the only thing you have to do is take a walk in nature and you get the same effect. That's why nature is so healing.
Right. Because there's a balance to it that we don't have. We're out of balance because of our human minds that imbalance us essentially, energetically. So I think that's why I know my guides are always telling me, like, I get that message all the time. Go in nature, go walk, be present, go in nature. So as I was delving into the research of the science behind all of this synchronicity, I stumbled on this gentleman named Kirby Surprise, and he is a psychologist. He's got his PhD, I believe, in psychology. And he wrote this book called Synchronicity, The Art of Coincidence, Choice, and Unlocking the Mind. And he really gets into the science behind synchronicities, and he illustrates how principles of quantum physics point to a strong connection between human consciousness and their environments. So, for example, he, in his book, talks about this experiment where they have some gamblers, and what they noticed is that if they were hoping for a certain number, so let's say they're hoping for the number 6, okay, and they rolled this die multiple times, what they noticed is there was a 3 to 6% higher chance that they would roll more 6s, which is really considered a statistically significant finding. So if you took people that were not hoping for a certain number, it would just be more random, right? And so that just goes to show that there is a connection between our consciousness and the material world. And he states that modern scientists used to laugh at our ancestors for what appeared to be superstitious, science, but now they're not laughing anymore. There's more and more findings based on quantum physics that are showing our world is a little out there and woo-woo. And it's just like you said, it's like demystification, right? If we took a radio and landed it on the planet 4,000 years ago, and they heard this sound coming out of this radio, and they were like, oh my God, this thing is from the heavens. They wouldn't understand it because they wouldn't understand the technology that was well advanced. They would think that it was just like, oh my God, this is a synchronicity. This is a sign from God. This is something. And our minds just sometimes don't have the capacity to understand things that are unseen. So a lot of the things that we're talking about, it's just that we don't have the way to measure it. What Dr. Surprise does in his books is he uses the analogy of this book that was written back in the early 1900s called Flatland. So basically, this book was about a world that was two-dimensional. It was flat, right? There was no up and down. Like you couldn't go over or under anything. You could only move horizontal, right? In that plane. Let's say this cone drops out from outer space and drops into flatland, and the point of the cone goes straight down into the reality. Well, they couldn't see anything other than a point. So it would be that point where the cone actually touched their planet, and they couldn't see the whole cone. That would be beyond their ability to measure or even see or understand. Right. And so he likens this concept to how synchronicities and symbols work in our reality, that because we're in this 3D reality, there's like infinite realities that well, I should say dimensions, because there's infinite dimensions that exist beyond the third dimension, but we just have no way of measuring or understanding them. I mean, science can point to it through theoretical physics, but we can't prove their existence for sure, because we just have a rudimentary language to kind of even understand it, but it's like beyond our reality. I mean, we can't get...
And plus, we have not been trained in our society to look for those things as natural and normal. So when something shows up, it seems odd. And then our logical mind wants to put it in a box or dismiss it just to feel safe.
Right.
Because it's something out of our normal everyday life or reality. So.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And another interesting thing that he said that is kind of pointing to the fact that our reality is not how it seems. And we kind of got into this in our reality versus illusion series. Quantum physics has proven this, that by observing an experiment, when you observe it, it changes the outcome, because what you look for will get reflected back in the study. So if you're looking, so let's say you have a hypothesis about a certain study and you study all these people, it's going to affect the outcome of the study based on what you're expecting to happen. And this is exactly why they do double-blind studies, right? Because they get these people, if these people think that they're going to take a pill that's going to make them suddenly that, I don't know, that they're left
effect.
Right. Exactly. That's it. I mean, that is real, and for many people, placebos can be just as effective as actual medication.
And there's also the nocebo effect, where your doctor will tell you negative information in your mind.
Absolutely.
That can create too. So,
right. So basically we are creating reality as we go based on what we believe. All of this is pointing to the fact that there are phenomena going in the world that we can't really explain through science, right? But we can only kind of surmise and point to it through the theories that we do have. And what's interesting is earlier you were talking about the idea of parallel realities, where you could have either chosen to go out and hang out with your mom and you would have seen the hummingbird, but then in this other reality was hanging out with your friend and that bird was still there. So it's interesting how these signs are showing up in these multiple realities, again, to kind of confirm or to get us back on course or to say, hey, you're on the right track or whatever.
And that's really interesting that in these two different choices, that possibility was a given.
Right.
So if you're on track, I feel like the synchronicities show up more.
I think part of the thing too is that we'll get into this in a future series, but I think what happens is when people start to awaken, that's when we start to really notice these things, because I think when you awaken out of this 3D matrix is really when you start to kind of have that twinkle in your eye and that sense of awe and wonder of like, okay, there's more to this world than meets the eye. Well, we're going to have to stop here for today. We could go on and on and on about this topic, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to make part 2, 3, and possibly even 4 on this podcast series about this topic of magic in the universe and how the universe communicates to us. So we'd like to thank you all for joining today. Please join us on Instagram and Facebook, The Mystic Mamas, if you can find us there and be part of our Mystic Mamas community. Thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.